Hari Om. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryashu Sarvada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Bhadram Karnebhih Shrunuyama Devaah Bhadram Pashyamakshabhir Yajatraah Sthirairangai Stuštuvagam Sastanubhi व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्ताक्षो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Welcome. On behalf of Param Vedanta, a warm welcome to all of you. We start today with the longest chapter of Mandukya Karikas, the fourth chapter, Alata Shanti Prakaranam. There are 100 Karikas in this chapter. Different schools of philosophies, the darshanas, are analyzed in this chapter, and the fallacies raised by them about Advaita Vedanta are resolved by Gaudapada Acharya. He defends Vedanta, and in fact, in offense, he points out their logical deficiencies. There are four intense sessions which we will be having, and they will capture the 100 verses. So please keep attention. Dr. Hegde is going to moderate this session. Our speakers are Srimati Chetna, Dr. Ashwini, Dr. Divakar, Dr. Kiran, and Dr. Satya for this session. Over to you, Dr. Hegde.
Thank you, Neeta. Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. A very significant day for us as we have completed the study of Mandukya Upanishad, the Agama Prakarana, Vaitatya Prakarana, and the Advaita Prakarana. As already introduced by Neeta, we have 100 more Karikas on the Alata Shanti Prakarana. As already said, what is the primary purpose of this chapter? It is called a Manana Pradhana chapter. The primary purpose is to negate the other schools of philosophy and to establish Advaitam. It's written here as Dvaitam, and to establish Advaitam. Why is it considered as a Mananam Pradhana chapter? Mananam means an opportunity to clarify all doubts. In a way, we will be revising the entire Vedanta in a very systematic manner, with an opportunity for us to be so certain that if you have any doubts, doubts have to be clarified. Gaudapadacharya is very clear that doubtful knowledge is as good as ignorance. Samshaya Sahita Jnanam is as good as Ajnanam. Just see the example. Supposing there is a storm and some electrical wires are on the ground and they are blocking the way, and you have to cross some of these wires, and somebody very confidently tells you that the electricity has been put off and these are not live wires. And then you ask this person, are you sure? He says 99% sure. Now, if there is a 1% doubt, even if there is a 1% doubt, are you going to accept it? Certainly not. That means with the knowledge that we have gained on Vedanta, unless it is 100% certain, we are not going to consume doubt-ridden knowledge. So, therefore, this chapter is an opportunity for us to clarify the doubts. And in 3 sessions, we will quickly have an overview of the Alata Shanti Prakarana. There are many schools of philosophies which are called darshanas, and they may be classified as Nastika. Nastika are those schools that do not believe in the validity of the Vedas. They are the Charvakas, the Buddhist schools, and the Jaina schools. What are these Astika? Astika schools are those which believe in the validity of the Vedas, but then they may be subclassified as Tarka predominant. There are many philosophies like Sankhya, Yoga, Vaisheshika, Nyaya. All these are Tarka predominant. Tarka predominant means their philosophies are strongly based on logic with the background of Vedanta, with the background of the Vedas, and wherever possible, they will bring in an appropriate quotation to prove their logical point through the Vedas. On the other hand, the Mimamsa schools, Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. The school that we are studying is Uttara Mimamsa. These two schools are primarily based on not Tarka, not on logic, but on the Vedas. The Nastika school, as we will see today, are 6 in number. One is the Jaina school. There are 4 schools of Buddhism, and then the Charvakas. Because these schools are very strong in their logic, they have a very strong ability to criticize Vedanta. And whenever Advaita Vedanta is criticized, we have 2 approaches. First approach is to be defensive. And what is our defense? To say that we are not logic-based because the ultimate truth is really beyond logic. And therefore, we do not give too much importance to logic. We would rather go on the Vedas and go by the guidance of the Vedas than by logic alone, because the ultimate truth cannot be proved by logic. But however, if the other schools are very persistent, then the teachers of Vedanta are able to attack them. How? By using logic, and logically to be able to discover their loopholes and to disprove their own theories. Why are we so insistent on Advaita Vedanta? Now, it is seen that in Dvaita, there is no permanent solution. And those who have the realization through Advaita Vedanta are convinced that in Advaitam alone, there is a permanent solution. This chapter can be divided into 5 topics. So the first 10 that we will see today will be mainly an introduction to this chapter. From 11 to 27, that will also be considered in today's class, will be the negation of all the other dualistic schools. And from 28 to 54, that will be in the third class, there will be an essence of all Vedanta. I'm sorry, in the second class, that means the next week. In the last class, we will be continuing from about 60 to 100, where all the spiritual disciplines are discussed. The opening speaker will be Chetana, and I have a few questions for her. And this is how we will go to each speaker. Now, each speaker in their presentation have to answer these questions. And the first question to you, Chetana, you need to answer this is, how does Alata Shanti Prakarana begin? And why does Gaudapadacharya offer namaskara to the Advaitic teachings?
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So Gaudapadacharya begins with 2 Mangalacharam Karikas, where he offers prostrations to the Lord and to the Advaitic teaching also, because this teaching gives us Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Jnanam. So what is unique about this Jnanam is that in this, the subject, the object, and the instrument of knowledge are all one and the same. Thus, in self-knowledge, consciousness knows consciousness with the help of consciousness. So one Chaitanyam alone is the subject, object, and instrument. And to that, Lord Narayana and the Adi Guru, he offers his Namaskaram. He also gives a special name to this Advaitic teaching. He calls it Asparsha Yogaha. Why? Because in this teaching, I recognize myself as the one unaffected by anything that happens in the world around me. So asparsha means asangaha, yogaha means jnanam. So asparsha yoga means asanga atma jnanam. He also brings out 6 glories of this Advaitic teaching in the second Karika, but he elaborates only one glory, and that is avivadaha, which means that which is beyond all debates or arguments.
Before I ask you this question, Gaudapada Charya is such a strong believer in Advaita. For him, there is nobody. Now, and yet it is so nice to see how he begins by offering namaskara to his guru. That means in his interaction, there is someone that he offers reverence to, he offers, and because the whole kshetra that he is in Badrinath. You will remember that Gaudapada Acharya walks all the way from North Bengal to meet his guru, the great Sukhacharya, in Badrinath. And therefore, where he is offering his namaskara, he is offering namaskara to Lord Badri Narayana himself. The next question to you, Chaitanya, is why does Gaudapada Acharya say that Advaita knowledge is avivadaha? That means there is no dispute at all.
Okay, he explains how Advaitic knowledge is avivadaha from Karikas 3 to 5, and that Advaita does not have any dispute with other systems of philosophy. In other philosophies, theory of creation or how the world originated is an important and hotly debated subject matter. No other system of philosophy is able to agree with on this topic. So they are unable to agree whether an existing thing was created or a non-existing thing was created. So in the third Karika, Gaudapada says, Sankhya philosophers talk about the origination of an existent product called Satkaryavada, and Nyaya philosophers talk about the origination of a non-existent product called Asatkaryavada. And through various arguments, they logically negate each other's theories. So what is left is Advaita's theory, which is called Ajativada. That is why Advaitic teaching is avivadaha, beyond debate or disputes.
The next question to you is, what is the theory of creation according to Advaita Vedanta?
So Gaudapada says Advaitam has no theory of creation because there is no creation at all. This is called Ajati Vadaha. So how do we explain this world that we experience? According to Advaita, what is in front of us is not a world, but Brahman. What was before was also Brahman, and what will be there in future is also Brahman alone. So Brahman was, is, and ever will be. And since there is no creation, where is the question of having a theory of creation? So what exactly is, how does Advaita explain this creation? It says it is nothing but ignorance of our true nature. Since Advaitam does not have any theory of creation, it is beyond all arguments and hence is avivadaha darshanam.
What is Ajati Vada and which specific Upanishadic statement supports this?
So Advaita is ajativadaha or no creation theory. Vedanta says consciousness can never be created or destroyed. Science also says matter can never be created or destroyed. So Sankhya and Nyaya theory on creation does not hold good here. For example, there is no question of arrival of the pot because on inquiry, we come to the conclusion that there is no substance called pot. The substance is only clay. Previously, there was clay and now also there is clay. So as Chandogya Upanishad states, Vacharambhanam vikaraha namadeyam mritika iti eva satyam. Any product is not a substance. It is just a new word. Previously, there was clay only, and we have now chosen to introduce a new word called pot. In the same way, Gaudapadacharya says the world is not a substance, but just a word. There is no origination of anything other than a new nomenclature called Jagat, or this world. Therefore, Jagat is not born, Jivatma is also not born. And when Jivatma is never born, where is the question of rebirth of this Jivatma?
Before we go to the next question, I would like to highlight what has already been explained in what is this Alata Shanti Prakarana. In all the previous chapters, we had Vaitatya Prakaranam, which says everything is unreal. Whatever I see and experience is not real. That means this world is not real. In the third Prakaranam, Gaudapadacharya insists, Yetad Uttamam Satyam. The greatest truth is there is no creation whatsoever. You will remember how Bhagavan Ramana once was asked this question, how do you treat others? And in his vision, there are no others. Now, this is what is called Eka Jiva Vada. Other than me, there is no other real creation. My eva sakalam jatam, my sarvam pratishtitam, my sarvam layam yati, tad brahmadvayam asmayam aham. That is the vision of a jnani, an Advaita jnani, who sees nothing other than himself. Either he sees himself in everything, or this whole world is of a lower order of reality. That is what exactly means alata. I see so many things around me, but what is this? Now, supposing you take a torch and you swing it around, a certain pattern happens. As long as I do not see the reality of the torch, I see a pattern, I see something. But a jnani now sees that other than that light of consciousness, nothing else. All this is a projection, like a dream, which is of a lower order of reality. Question to Chaitanya is, what is the biggest samsara according to Gaudapada?
So the biggest samsara according to Gaudapadacharya is the desire for moksha. He says, I was the Paramatma, I am the Paramatma, I ever will be the Paramatma. So I am not a Jivatma who has come from Paramatma. I am not a Jivatma who has to merge with Paramatma. So there is no coming and goings. These are all confusions caused by Maya.
What are the wrong notions that Gaudapadacharya highlights in Karika 6 to 8?
So now thus from Karikas 3 to 5, Gaudapadacharya has established how Brahma Vidya is beyond dispute. And now from Karika 6 to 8, he summarizes the Vedantic teaching. But he begins first by highlighting the wrong notions of Dvaita principles. The contents of these three Karikas are the repetition of the three Karikas 20 to 22 occurring in the third chapter of Advaita Prakaranam, where Gaudapada says, the Advaitin has freed himself from a basic mistake that all other philosophers commit. In fact, freedom from this basic mistake is moksha, according to him. So what is this basic mistake? He says, the Dvaita philosophers, according to them, Paramatma is the cause of this world. This thinking is a mistake, he says. Why? Because this makes Paramatma the Karanam, and creation, including Jivatma, the Karyam. And their belief is the day I merge with the Lord, I will attain moksha. Gaudapada says all these ideas are entertained without considering the nature of Paramatma. And what is that? Paramatma is eternal. And this is accepted by everyone. So he questions, if God is eternal, how can that eternal God become the cause of this world or this Jivatma? Eternity and cause can never go together. It is a logical contradiction, like hot ice cream. So how? Because the very word cause implies modification or change. And eternal means beyond time, and so free from all modification. So if God is the cause, he cannot be eternal. If God is eternal, he cannot be the cause. Jivatma is not a product of Paramatma, but Paramatma itself. Therefore, I, the Jivatma, have not come from Paramatma. I only have to understand. I, the Jivatma, need not join or merge with Paramatma. So what should I do? I only have to understand and know that I was, am, and ever will be Paramatma. We should clearly understand this, that this separation is a misconception and not a physical event. I am never away from Paramatma, but I wrongly think I am away from him. This misconception is caused entirely by ignorance. And the only way to drop this notional distance is with knowledge and understanding that I was one with Paramatma in the past, I am one with him in the present, and I am ever one with him in the future also. So there is no question of becoming or joining Paramatma. The only thing required is understanding that I was, I am, and I ever will be with him. Therefore, the immortal Paramatma can never become the mortal Jivatma. And immortal means changeless, and the word becomes means to undergo change. Therefore, to say the changeless Paramatma changes to become Jivatma is a contradiction in terms. So, therefore, to reinforce, the infinite can never become finite. The immortal cannot become mortal. And the mortal cannot become immortal. Therefore, the very attempt for liberation or moksha is a misconception. Moksha is therefore liberation from this very idea or notion that I want to become liberated. Understanding that this idea is wrong is moksha. If mortality is one's essential nature, then he will be he will ever be mortal. No amount of sadhana will change his status. On the other hand, if immortality is one's nature, he need not work for immortality. So the only sadhana required is to understand this fact clearly.
So the only sadhana is to understand this very clearly. I am already that. So what is moksha according to Advaita?
So moksha according to Advaita is it's neither becoming nor joining, but knowing the fact that I was, I am, and I ever will be Paramatma. That samsara is only a misconception. It is pure ignorance and error. And what is required is correcting that error. Only when this is clearly understood, the importance of the knowledge will become clear. That jnanam is the only solution must be very clear. Otherwise, we will look forward to some future event when we will get moksha. The expectation of jnana as a future event is the biggest samsara. Thus, in conclusion, according to Swamiji, these Dvaita Ninda Karikas from 6 to 8 are important and worth meditating upon. If one understands these Karikas alone, the idea of moksha and the importance of self-knowledge will become very clear. Hari Om, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chetana, for giving us the very convincing outlook of Sri Gaudapada Acharya, and that we need to know I am already that. This whole thing is reinforced by in future karikas, which Dr. Ashwini will explain. And Dr. Ashwini, I have a few questions for you, which I hope your presentation will answer this. Now, we will be discussing what is this Sankhya philosophy. What do the Sankhyas theory of creation? In fact, Sankhya is very close to Vedanta. You will see in many chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, particularly in the 13th chapter and in the second chapter. Second chapter is also called Sankhya Yoga. So Sri Krishna also borrows Sankhya philosophy. Please give us a hint into Sankhya philosophy, their theories of creation. What is the Satkarya Vada, and how does Gaudapada Acharya refute their claims? Dr. Ashwini.
Thank you, sir. Namaste. Now, in this unit, we find out Sankhyan's theory of causation, Purusha and Prakriti, distinction between Purusha and Prakriti, gunas of Prakriti, very briefly, and then Gaudapada Acharya's description of Karikas 9 to 30. Now, this gives us an insight into the wise way of approaching disputes and philosophical matters, which we use as foundation to protect philosophy of non-duality against the opposition that is bound to encounter. Now in next slide, now here we see the introduction into Sankhya philosophy. The Sankhya philosophy is one of the ancient and is so because of the basic tenets of Sankhya, can also be seen in Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Yoga, Jainism, and also in Vedanta. Kapila Muni, who is the author of Sankhya Sutra, is considered as a founding father for the philosophy. And it is commented by many scholars. The significant commentary is by Ishwara Krishna as Sankhya Karika. Now, Sankhya originated or derived from the word Sankhya, meaning number or right knowledge. Now, this is considered or regarded as dualistic realism. Why dualistic? Because the basis is Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti is the matter, Purusha is a spirit, or you can also call self. Now, it maintains plurality of Purushas and existence of matter, hence it is pluralistic. Why realistic or why realism is because they view both matter and spirit are equally real. Also, they are radically different from each other like subject and object. In the next slide, sir. Now here, the Sankhyans describe Prakriti as the first cause of all objects, including mind, body, sense organs. Please observe what they say is, every effect must have a cause. Every effect must have a cause. Cause and effect are two inseparable components. They are two inseparable components. They stand for all sorts of creation in the cosmos. So all the objects of the world are bound in the chain of this cause and effect relation. So this theory of causation is Satkaryavada. Now what does it explain? It explains that effect exists in its material cause prior to its production. Now here I have given two examples. One is curd, which was pre-existing in the milk. So effect is not a new creation. It's also called Parinamavada because it is, there is a cause which is transformed into effect. Okay, here two examples. One is milk transforming into curd, gold transforming into bangle. Now we can agree with this in respect to all the worldly transactions. But naturally, the question that arises, if every effect must have a cause, then what would be the cause of the material cause? Sankhya responds to this query as Prakriti. Now I've already told Prakriti, which is the first and ultimate cause of all objects, both gross and subtle. In the next slide. Now here we will see what is Prakriti, what is Purusha, the differences, and what is their road to the evolution. Here, if you see Prakriti, they regard this as the first cause. Please observe very carefully. We need to remember this when we are refuting Sankhyans. So regard this as a first cause, first elements, and itself is uncaused, which means it is eternal, all-pervading. It's also called Pradhana. Now, this cannot be perceived but inferred from its effect. So it's called Jada in conscious elements, Avyakta in unmanifested objects. Now, this Prakriti advocates three gunas. Okay, that is one is Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Okay, advocates three gunas. Sattva, obviously, it's a nature of pleasure. Rajas, the principle of activity in things, mostly the nature of pain. Tamas, principle of passivity or negativity in the things. Now, they contradict and cooperate among each other to produce an object. So, this is Prakriti. What is Purusha? Purusha is a self or eternal reality. He is a subject or the knower. He is neither body, nor manas, nor buddhi, nor ahankar, but basis for all knowledge, or also called supreme power. Purusha is the sole authority of all experiential knowledge. He is witnessing all three gunas and also he is beyond these three gunas. Very important point, there are pluralities of the self or Purusha. They are identical in their essences and embedded with consciousness. So they believe in plurality of the selves. Now this nearness between Prakriti and Purusha causes evolution. Now the order in the creation, I put it on the slide. The first one is Mahat, Mula Prakriti, and then Mahat, Buddhi or Mahat, Ahankara, Manas, 5 sense organs, which are Jnanendriyas, 5 organs of action, Karmendriyas, 5 subtle elements, Tanmatra, then 5 physical elements, Mahabhutas. So therefore, this whole creation, according to Sankhyavadi, has come into existence by the modification of a cause. Which is that cause? That is Prakriti. So here, a new terminology, Prakriti is called Karanam. This has transformed into Prapancha, which is called Karyam. So Prakriti is a Karanam, Prapancha is a Karyam. This transformation is otherwise called as evolution. Now to reinforce it again, world is created not by production, but by transformation of its cause, which existed before, and that cause is same as the world, only not in the world form, but in a different form. So Prakriti, which is Karanam, Prapancha, which is Karyam, are the same substance. Okay, so this we'll have to remember. Now with this little background, we will look into the Gaudapadacharya's descriptions of the Karikas 9 to 30. Next slide, sir. So in the verses 9 and 10, before Gaudapadacharya refutes the Sankhyan philosophy, he reinforces the Ajativada. So this Ajativada, it's already been introduced. Now here in these 2 verses, he discusses the inherent nature of a thing and the spirit. So which means there is no creation which has come out of any cause, either from Brahman or anything other than Brahman. He establishes that Brahman can never produce or can be the cause of creation. Now there are 2 points. Now the first point, obviously there is a raw material which is required to create. But Brahman is non-dual. There is no second other thing to serve other than Brahman has raw material. So Brahman should become raw material, which means Brahman has to undergo change. But what is the definition? Clearly, definition is Brahman is changeless. Thus, Brahman cannot be intelligent cause nor material cause of the universe. Brahman has always been Brahman, which means we are not Jivatma but Paramatma. This is natural and we all should claim this fact. In verse number 10, again Gaudapadacharya describes the essential nature of Paramatma. What is the essential nature of Paramatma? Free from all modifications or attributes. Now, the aim of Vedanta is to help every Jivatma to claim he is the immortal Paramatma. Attributing mortality to oneself is denial of one's own nature. So when I preserve this misconception of taking myself as Jivatma, I fall into this eternal trap of samsara. How? I'll accept this world as Jagat, Ishvara as creator, and I become that miserable Jiva who constantly face problem and rush to Bhagavan. So let us all wake up to the higher nature, that is Turiyam, is the message conveyed. Now in the next slide, sir, 11, 12, 13, we come to the refuting Satkaryavada. Now here in verse number 11, Gaudapadacharya puts across his arguments. Now here we will look into the verse. Karanam yasya vai karyam, they say cause itself becomes the effect. Karanam tasya jayate, that implies the cause undergoes birth. Jayamanam kathamajam, how can a thing that is birthless take birth? Bhinnam nityam katham chat. And how can it be eternal if it has effects? Now, when we ask Satkaryavadis about the nature of Prakriti and its origination, their answer was Mula Prakriti, that is the original cause. And what did they call the Mula Prakriti? It's without a beginning. It is Anadi or Anantam. Also Nityam, which means it cannot be destroyed. Now, this Prakriti, which is Anadi or Anantam or Nityam, evolves into creation, then it will not be subject to change, but for evolution, it has to undergo change. So when it undergoes change, where is the subject of being eternal? It is no longer eternal. So in the verse number 11, Gaudapadacharya logically refutes Sankhyans. In verse number 12, so he again asks another question where he says, Karanat yeti ananyatvam, if effect is not different from cause. Atah karyam ajam yadi, then the effect must also be birthless. Jayamanat hi vai karyat, or if the cause is not different from born effect, karanam te katham dhruvam, then how can the cause be eternal? In my introduction of Sankhya philosophy, we derived from their metaphysics that cause and effect that is Karanam and Karyam, are essentially the same. We said it's the same substance. In different condition, they are different, but the substance is same. Now, for example, like, Karanam is an ice cube. Ice cube melting into water. Here, Karanam is ice cube. Water is Karyam. Now, water produces ice cube. Water is Karanam, ice cube is Karyam. But then the substance is water. It's the same. Similarly, if Prakriti is Karanam, Prapancha is Karyam, shouldn't they be essentially same? So their essential nature must be same, according to Sankhyavad. But what are they calling here? Prakriti is Ajam or Nityam, which is unborn or eternal. Prapancha is Jatam or Anityam, so which is born. Now, therefore, here the Karana Karya Aikya equation does not tally, because two different nature are ascribed to Karanam Prakriti and Karyam Prapancha. In the final verse, the Gaudapadacharya says there is absolutely no supporting illustration to your logic. Now, in Sanskrit, we say something called as Anumana. Anumana is an inferred knowledge. Okay, what happens here is, it has this 5 steps. First, there is a pratigna, there is a hypothesis, and there is a reason for it. And then there is an udaharana for it, there is an example. Then it will be reaffirmed, there will be a reaffirmation, and then it will be concluded. So, hypothesis is conditionally true if there are positive examples and an absence of counter evidence. For example, wherever there is smoke, there is fire. So, logically, if we see smoke, we assume there must be a fire based on our experience that is developed from an idea. Now, Gaudapadacharya argues that in our experience, every Karanam itself is Karyam. What does it mean by here? Now, every Karanam is born out of its Karanam, means there is a seed which can turn into a tree, correct? So, seed becomes a Karanam for tree. But isn't the seed Karyam of its previous tree? Now, seed becomes a Karyam of its previous tree. So, Karanam has a beginning. Now, if going back, if Prakriti is Karanam, it cannot be Anadi. So, there is no Udaharana or example to support this unborn cause. Then, if Satkaryavadi says Prakriti has got a Karanam, then that must also have a Karanam. And it keeps going back. It just leads to endless regression, just like we keep naming our forefathers backwards to infinity. Hence, when it comes to Prakriti and Prapancha, Satkaryavada has several logical loopholes. Finally, to quote one of the Advaitic scholars, you are the self, that perfect, immutable self. Nothing else ever existed. Nothing else will ever exist. There is only one self, and you are that. Claim it and rejoice it. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashwini. You very nicely explained what is this Sankhya philosophy, which comes so close to Vedanta, which Sri Krishna borrows it wherever it is useful for our understanding of Prakriti, of creation, and so on. And yet you will see the Satkaryavada has its loopholes, and Gaudapadacharya so nicely refutes this theory when it comes to about creation. Now let us look at Mimamsakas. We are now looking at another school, Advaita school called Purva Mimamsa. Now Purva Mimamsa is a Astika school which believes in the validity of the Vedas, like our school of Uttara Mimamsa. So we would like to see how it differs and how it is similar. Now they also have another theory which is strongly based on the karma theory. And what is this karma karya vada, Dr. Dibakar? And what are the fallacies that they have about this beginningless karma sharira series? Dr. Dibakar, please.
Thank you, sir. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. I think the background, knowledge which is already given by Chetna ma'am and by Ashwini and your own explanation is absolutely necessary to build the arguments and the refuting for the Purva Mimamsakas. So just to recap quickly, what does Alata Shanti cover? A. Ajatavada. This is the theory of the absolute non-creation. So what does it contain specifically? Existence of the world has to be negated. Origination of the world is to be negated. Now, this is what we are actually refuting here. Like what was explained to refute the Sankhya philosophy, the very same issue of creation of the world. That is what we are actually taking and refuting other philosophies. The second one, origination of the world is to be negated. And other things which are looked at is appearance and experience of the world are to be accepted. We know that there is an appearance, but it is a lower order of reality. And the appearance of the world is because of the power of the Maya. And of course, the other topics which are covered in this Arata Shanti Prakarana is Mithyatvam and Atma Swarupan and Jnanapalam. Next slide, we will see. This is already talked about, the 6 schools of philosophies. In the next slide, sir. So here, the topic of creation, the second one, the origination of the universe or the world has to be negated. So Sat Karyavada is talked about already. That is something that the Sankhyans firmly believe in, which means existent world originates. And there is Asat Karyavada. Asat Karyavada is the theory or the conviction of the Nyaya and Vaisheshika systems, which means non-existent world originates. Whereas the Vedantins, particularly Advaita Vedantins, believes in Ajatavada. They will say that neither the existent and nor the non-existent thing originates because nothing actually originates. But we do study a lot of this when we are studying Vedanta also. Creation, manifestation, everything is talked about. In the initial stages of our spirituality, one must accept the concept of creation, creator, etc. Because it will help us in our preliminary sadhanas of Karma Yoga and the Upasana Yoga. And only when we are, we have developed a mastery over this, we get the adhikaratvam. We become the sadhana chatushtaya adhikari. This acceptance of creation, Jiva Jagat Ishvara, is actually adhyaropa prakriya. Shastras deliberately bring it. In fact, Gaudapada Acharya himself says this. Why does Shastras talk about it if it is not there? So this is the Adhyaropa. We all know about Adhyaropa Apavada. And then in the Gnana Yoga, in the Vedantic inquiry, one must question the very creation, which is what is happening right now. And this is the Apavada Prakriya. And once you negate it, you will start to realize that you're always been that Siddhavastu. You're always been liberated. But if you don't negate it, if there is no apavada, you will get stuck at Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara, and our bondage with the samsara will continue and our suffering will continue. Next slide, sir. Very quickly, the proponent of the Purva Mimamsa is Maharshi Jaimini. Now, Maharshi Jaimini, we'll see in the next slide, is the student of Vedavyasa himself. The word Mimamsa itself is derived with the root verbal word, which is man, which means to know, which means Mimamsa is the desire to know. So, what is that? There is Purva Mimamsa, which can also be called as an earlier inquiry. Uttara Mimamsa, which is nothing but the Vedanta, is a later inquiry. So you can look at it in a different way. Purva Mimamsa is required. We need that as a preliminary step to come to the Uttara Mimamsa. Now, Purva Mimamsa is also called as Dharma Mimamsa or Karma Mimamsa. It strongly defends the Vedic rituals. Perhaps the most religious of all the Shad Darshanas that we know of. The next slide, we see further. There are about 2,500 sutras in the Purva Mimamsa, which is by far the biggest compared to all darshanas. As told before, Jaimini is a student of Vedavyasa. And Jaimini Sutras is a work of 12 chapters, and the main commentator for this is Shabara Swami. There are again 2 further schools of Purva Mimamsa called as Kumarila Bhatta and Prabhakara, and there's this epistemology which I won't be going into the details, because they also believe in the 6 pramanas, although one school does not believe in Anupalabdhi. Next slide, sir. Now, Vedic rituals, as told earlier, has been given a lot of emphasis. Karma palas are given more emphasis in the Purvamimamsa. So, Punya karma plus dharma is what will give moksha, is what they say. Agnihotras, Panchamahayagna, all the rituals are highlighted and they must be performed in those people who follow Purvamimamsa. More emphasis is given for the mantras, swaras, and they say, in fact, that God does not exist. If at all God exists, they exist in the form of mantras, in the form of swaras. Therefore, emphasis is on how you pronounce the mantras. So, God mentioned in the mantras exists as a virtue of the action of the mantras only. And there's no separate God according to them. Power of the mantras is the God. Philosophy of the language and analysis of the language is given more importance, and that's what is passed on to the next generation. Therefore, you see people who are following Purvamimamsa are extremely pedantic in the way that you follow these rituals. Next slide. So quickly, we will see the differences between Purvamimamsa and Uttaramimamsa. Purvamimamsa focuses on the dharma, which is the right action. Vedanta, however, focuses on moksha. Emphasis is on the rituals, worship and mantras in Purvamimamsa, whereas Vedanta, it is more on the Jnanam. Purvamimamsa says karma is the cause for our suffering, whereas Vedanta, as we know, says ignorance about our true nature is the cause for suffering. Next slide. Now we look at the Gautapadacharya's refuting the Purvamimamsa Vadas from the verses 14 to 23. So I'm not going into the details of each verse, but each verse you will see, if you actually read the verses, the words of Hetu and Phalam is used repeatedly. Hetu means the cause, Phalam is the effect. They say that cause originates the effect, effect originates the cause, and cause and effect are originated together. This is how the logic of the Purvamimamsa goes, and Gaudapadacharya refutes all of them. The theory of creation, Vaidika Srishti Prakriya in Vedanta it is not accepted, whereas in Veda Purva it is accepted. Gaudapada says Srishti Prakriya is Adhyaropa Kala. It is in the Adhyaropa Kala. You see, you look at these terminologies. Kala is the time, which means even when you are actually studying in the spiritual path, you are still not prepared. When you are a sadhaka, that Kala, your mind is still not kind of mature enough. Therefore, it is accepted at that stage to believe in creation. It is as if like, you're building and there is a scaffolding there. That scaffolding period is the Adhyaropa Kala. Once the building is over, there is no functioning. There is no purpose for that scaffolding and you have to remove that. And that removal is the Apavada. So, Vedic view of law of karma is the Karma Karyavada, and that's also talked about and explained. Brahman cannot create as there is no raw material for the Brahman. Then Brahman plus Maya, Ishvara is the cause for the creation that we have studied before, where Maya is the raw material. But there is so much of disparity in our creation. This disparity is because of karmas of the individuals. If there are disparities and law of karma is the cause to bring about the changes in the individuals, in real sense, Ishvara is also not a creator, isn't it? But the further argument, we know that Ishvara is only a Samanya Karanam, whereas Karma is the Vishesha Karanam. This is the Karma Karyavada. Now you see, yes, Jivas get births based on their own previous Karma Phala. Then what about the initial Srishti itself? Whose Karma Phala was it to have the initial creation? So whose law of karma was it for the creation of the universe? Therefore, karma karyavada itself is negated. Next slide. Now, Gaudapadacharya takes step-by-step approach. All these purple-colored italics is Gaudapadacharya's refutations, whereas the black-colored ones is the Purvamimamsaka. Purvamimamsaka says, karma is the cause, the mula karanam of the shariram. the body, which is representative of the entire creation, karma first. Okay, so this is the hetu first. So we have talked about this. So this is false, as one needs shariram to do karma, and only then they get punya papa according to the law of karma. So shariram is the cause for the karma. This is the answer given by Gaudapadacharya. The second question that Purvamimamsaka says is, okay, no, in that case, shariram is the moola karanam of the karma. It's not the other way around, body first. Then for that, the response is, Ishvara is impartial. We know that he is a karma phaladhatha. So if shariram is the moola karanam, then Ishvara gives bodies for all individuals. When they have zero karma account, we know that there are so many diverse sharirams. One person takes birth in a rich family, other person takes birth in a poor family, a lot of disabilities, etc. Therefore, karma pala prior to the body itself is the right. It's not the shariram. So you can see how it's a bit like an argument in a court where two big lawyers are arguing with each other and then refuting each other's argument. So Gaudapada says shariram is not the moola karanam. For that, the response by the Purva Mimamsaka is, in that case, both karma and shariram originate simultaneously, like the two horns of the cow growing simultaneously. Gaudapada says that's not valid because it cannot then show the cause and effect relationship, which is what was the primary argument by the Purva Mimamsaka. As we expect cause and effect relationship between karma and shariram, that was already established by the Purva Mimamsa. So he actually attacks them with that argument. In the next slide, we see the further points. Purva Mimamsaka then says karma and shariram are mutually the cause and effects. So karma is born out of the shariram and shariram is born out of the karma. Then Gaudapada says this is also not logical, because if you say so, then son of a father cannot be the father of the son. So how can, you can say Dasharatha is the father of Rama, but Rama is not the father of Dasharatha. So that argument is also kind of defeated. Then the next one, karma and sharira are part of the long series. From karma sharira comes, then shariram karma comes, and so on, like the tree and the seed and the tree series, which was discussed earlier. This, of course, leads to endless, infinite regression without a beginning, like father-son equation. So what is the cause of the fundamental origin? Again, the same question. Who is the first father according to this theory? Original cause cannot be determined in this vichara. The sixth one, karma sharira series is anadi, is the argument by the Purva Mimamsaka. This and the response to that, this Vedanta Srishtivada is fine up to Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga, like the scaffolding, but not for the Gnana Yoga. And we will see this in the next slide. These logical fallacies are explained by Gaudapadacharya. If you just focus on the last two, A and B aspects, what are the fallacies according to this series? Okay, when you say Karma Sharira series is Anadi, it's even grammatically not correct. If you say Anadi, it's an adjective. Does it belong to the karma or the sharira? Both are refuted previously. So it must belong to the series of karma and the sharira. But there is no such thing called a series, but it is only the individual, just like the fruit salad. Although one fruit, although it is the one word, it is a group of individual fruits. So actually negates using the grammar itself. And the second part is, if the karma sharira series is anadi, then there is no moksha at all. It is anirmoksha prasanga dosha. This is talked about in the 30th verse, which is going to come later on. What is anadi is also ananta. So if you say karma sharira series is that will perpetually recur, then where is the moksha? But if one says through spiritual sadhana, one day karma sharira series ends, and that marks the end of the samsara and the beginning of moksha, there is a problem here too. Whatever begins should end. If you say moksha begins, one day that moksha should also end, paving way for the samsara to come back again. Then this will cause samsara moksha series. which is again a big fallacy, as temporary moksha is not really moksha. Next slide, sir. So therefore, for moksha, origination of the world has to be negated. So what has to be remembered is I am and I have been and ever will be mukta. I am the nityoham, shuddhoham, buddhoham, muktoham. If Vedas had said that there is no creation and no samsara in the very beginning itself, then perhaps the individual will reject the Vedas straight away also. So Gaudapada says there is a purpose of introducing the creations in the beginning, because that is required when our minds are still not very prepared. You introduce that as Adhyaropa and then remove it later on in the Jnana Yoga. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Divakar. Excellent, giving us various theories of creation, and we see the loopholes, and therefore, ultimately, Ajativada is sustained. Now, Dr. Kiran, you have a few questions to answer. Is there a creation? Now, I want answers from the Buddhist schools of philosophy. If there is a creation, who created the creator? Is everything in the mind? If there is no creation, then what is this we are explaining? Dr. Kiran, please.
Thank you, sir. Hari Om, Gurubhyo Namaha. As we know, Alata means ring of fire or a shape created by fire, as sir said. Is there a ring? Creation we are talking about so much. Is there a creation? These are the questions which we will think about it. Previous speakers have taken off and have reached a climax. So my job, my responsibility is to ensure a smooth landing. So what I will do is I will present as simple as possible so that we can understand what we are doing. Here, as sir has told, Buddhist is part of a Nastika philosophy. That means beauty of Hinduism or Vedanta or Vedic philosophy is even the atheism, which is considered as something black sheep in Western philosophy, is a part of Vedantic. So if somebody says I'm atheist, you say, don't worry, you are also part of our group. Come, let us continue this journey, we can say. Now, let us see what is this Nastika philosophy and how it is refuted. Next slide, please. The Buddhist philosophies have four important concepts. First is external or Bahyartha Pratyaksha. That means what I see, what I feel is the world. Why you're unnecessarily introducing complication? I'm seeing some round thing. I'm seeing Earth. I'm seeing Moon. Okay, this is all it is. What else is there in life? That is all. This is one type of thing. Second is there is something beyond it. There is some concepts. So this is little at a higher level. This is called idealism. Means it is not ideal. It is an idea, a concept of idea. That is why it is called idealist, or I would say it is ideaist. And third is, it says there is no other world and other thing as what a conscious principle feels and sees. It's like a dream world. Whole world is dream. There is nothing other than this. Like as Sir gives a beautiful example, in a far off island, a big tree has fallen off with a loud thud. Nobody has seen. So is the tree has fallen off? What difference does it make? Nothing. So this is the third. And fourth is what is called as Shunya or Shunyavada. This was very, very powerful, and this comes very, very close to Advaita, little bit deviation, but this ultimately was the single philosophy which made Vedanta took backseat for a long time. Here he says the world is, there is nothing. It is just an illusion, Maya, Mithya. Everything is, whatever we see is just Mithya and nothing is there. Let us see how these are dealt with. Next slide, please. Yeah, first let us talk about realist, or what way I call it, sensory, or what you see as what it is, and what are the things problem with it, or what are the good things about it. Let us see. He says in this verse, I won't read the verse because these are all not mantras, these are karikas. He says every knowledge has some external cause. I derive every knowledge I see as external cause. So that is the main thing, what I see, the experience. If this is not real, then how it causes me pain, it causes me sorrow, it causes me happiness, how it is? Let us see, let us go into the detail of it. Next slide, please. So we are able to know anything through the knowledge of instruments, now of knowledge. That means I have eyes, I'm seeing color, objects, etc. I hear sound, that is a instrument. So if these instruments are there, these sensations are there, then only I am able to perceive it. Then I can interpret in my mind what exactly this is, a round in color, this is a ball, this is that, this is that. So this is what it is. And second thing is, if this is not real, then how it can affect me? It causes me pain. If somebody pinches me, I feel pain. So it is real. Why are you unnecessarily worrying about these things? Why, if duality is not the thing, then why it is? And one more argument he puts is if what use of this consciousness or knowledge, pure knowledge by itself without knowing anything? It is like two blind people arguing which is a better color, red or blue. It is not possible, or it is, you feel it is foolish. So why we do all those things? So that is what he puts one argument. Second argument he says is, as I told, every external object will produce some change in me. And I interpret it. I see some bus is coming, something, I know it pains, so I move out. So these are, if it is unreal, then every time it should create a different feeling. Why it is not, and why it is creating the same thing? This is the realistic view. Next slide, please. So now let us come to the mind. For a simple understanding, I'll call them mind people, understanding the mind. From logical point of view, what you are saying is correct. Everything external, we see, we feel, everything is true. That has to be accepted. From the understanding the real, what we see, everything is real. Is it correct? No, it may not be. Whatever we see is not the thing. Whatever we see is not the ultimate. I see a cloth here. Is the cloth ultimate? If I study deeply, it is made up of threads. So thread is the reality. Why are you telling cloth is the reality? Next slide, please. Next, yeah. So here the two viewpoints are presented. The idealist says the reality of sensory thing is okay from just what you call worldly view. But if you look closely, if you interpret closely, then whatever we see is not the ultimate. It depends on different interpretation, different changing of the mind, different understanding of the mind. What a child understands is different from what I understand about whatever I see. So I cannot say whatever my eye sees is ultimate. Even in science, what I see is 60% from memory, and whatever only 40% is as it is seen. Otherwise, everything else, 60% of our interpretation, what I see and what I tell, I see this pen, if I tell means that is 60% is from memory and only 40% is actual seeing. Next slide, please. So he goes into whether this, if the whatever we see is the ultimate reality. Take this snake and rope example. If a rope is seen as a snake, then it should be snake always. But it is not always. But many people will have delusions. Many people will have different interpretations. So it is the mind which ultimately is more important than the sensory things, he says. This different concepts is better understand as a step ladder type rather than each are different in this. So he says whatever mind says is real. That is where the fallacy is. Mind is a relatively better real than sensory, but here the mind people create that mind is ultimate reality. So let us understand what is a fallacy in this. Next slide, please. So here he says, consciousness is neither a real object nor an upper object, but a real object is non-existent. It is always mind which does. Let us study this in detail. Next slide, please. So here he says, the external world is not always present. It is always the mind which gives the external object. Here is the fallacy which comes. It is because of the mind I see something. It is okay from relative perception. I was once, when I was a medical student, I attended my first psychiatry session. One patient came, I didn't know much. He told, sir, every time one bug comes into my ear, it has got these 8 limbs, black in color. I take out like that and it disappears, runs off, then again it comes. I was just surprised. What is this? He was telling this that I was searching his ear and all. Then the boss comes and says, this fellow is schizophrenic. He has been telling this from the past, some 8 months or something. So for him, that is the real. For us, if we assume that whatever mind believes, mind thinks is real, then it is not, there is something beyond that. If mind were indeed the reality, then there is nothing beyond that. So how it is possible? Let us see. Next slide. So consciousness does not contact an object. This is the fallacies which is bringing out of the mind people. And in all three periods of time, then how can that consciousness have an error with the external object? Next slide, please. So let me explain this. So they regard experiences as entirely due to condition or the inclination of the mind. This is correct to some extent, but not always. We cannot say everything is because of mind. It is not the external thing that brings us experience. This is the fallacy. The state of mind projects experience. It is okay in some stage, but it is not always true. If my mind is very clear, that doesn't mean that a snake becomes poisonless. No, it is not. The external does not influence the experiences of the mind. The mind can be said to create its own world. That is what is the fallacy here. The full responsibility of perception is taken by mind. It's like a hypnosis. So whatever mind, if mind is good, then everything is good. It's not like that. But this is what this mind people take. And it is in the mind alone which happens. The final implication of this idea thing is there is no such thing as false knowledge, because whatever mind perceives from its standpoint of view, it is correct. So there is no false knowledge, there is no true knowledge, there is no ignorance, nothing. These are all the fallacies which we understand because we already have some understanding. They cannot go beyond mind. It is a step ladder type, but they get stuck in the mind. And they say in accepting the mind as a reality, they accept karma as a full stop. Whereas the Vedantin or the Advaintin, we go beyond and understand it. Next slide, please. So now let us see how this is a very, very beautiful, important two verses, because the Vedantin perspective is introduced here. The object of consciousness is not born, nor is consciousness born. Then what is it? It's like a footprints in the sky. Next slide, please. Now, as Divakar, Ashwini and I brought out, the whole concept of Vedantic view restless on this non-creation, non-birthless. So let us understand what is this. Let me take an example of of Ashwini, which was given, curds and milk. The milk has turned into curds. Can the milk become curds? Can the curd become milk again? No. This is what somebody says is birth or is creation. A mother has given to the birth to a child. The child is independent of the mother. The child is not dependent on the mother. Somebody else has given birth to the mother. So the mother is independent. The child is independent. Am I independent of God? We are not thinking here to discuss whether God is there or not. We are here to discuss the nature of the God. Is God separate from us? No. If we understand this creation as it is told in before, the fallacy comes is God has created the world. The world is running on its own. God is somewhere else trying to influence sometime, and other time he is not influencing. This is the biggest fallacy. That is why we need to understand this very, very clearly, and we need to understand and get above it. Similarly, just like a gold and bangle, there's no difference. After curd happens, milk doesn't come. But in Vedanta, the gold is always there in bangle, in every jewel. Similarly, this world, God, as we understand, Brahman is there. This is the ultimate reality in the world, in and through everything. And the world is just nothing but Brahman. This is the philosophy, or this is the understanding which we have to understand. This is possible only if we see the reality of it. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is what is I told Ajatavada, or the birthlessness argument. The mind, Gaudapada says, if we accept reality, it's like we are accepting the footprints of the birds in the sky. Is poetic and condemns it. So it is impossible to imagine such a thing. You cannot imagine the world being born or die or birth, when Brahman is there in and throughout. So what you are telling is like, footprints in the sky, or, fish footprints in the water. This is not possible, because we have to transcend the mind and understand the ultimate reality of the God. What is this reality of the God? We'll study further. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now, before that, Shunyavadis, he says, they come very close, as I said, even beyond the mind they come. But this is where they stop. They don't understand that even to say nothing is there, there should be something which is always there, which they do not acknowledge. So Shankaracharya even more vehemently condemns and saying they are trying to grasp the whole sky itself, let alone telling footprints in the sky. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this birthlessness is a different is a statement which is not there, because there is no creation. Why it is, I will explain it in this next few slides. Next slide, please. Yeah. Sarvam Brahma Mayam. So you have to move from Sarvam Brahma and Mayam to Sarvam Brahma Mayam. Even Maya is a part of Brahma, and there is nothing separate. It's not even part. It is, everything is at a different levels of our understanding. That's all. Brahman is unborn and is Ekam. There is no, Jivatma, there is no Paramatma, there is only one Atma. All others are Adhyasa. Just like how Jivatma is Adhyasa, even Paramatma is Adhyasa. This is what he is saying. He shows Karanam cannot be eternal. Mandukya Upanishad, the beauty of it is he negates Karanam. This is one of the, all Upanishad do it, but this is where he boldly negates Karanam. Everything which is a creator has to be created. So there is no Karanam, there is no Karyam. Then what it is, we will understand further. Here you have to understand there is nothing called reality, there is nothing called unreality, there is something called conditional reality. This is what we have to understand. Once we know that ultimate reality is Brahman or me, my essential nature, we have to introduce the term called conditional reality. If Brahman is Nityam, he cannot be Karanam or Karyam of anything, because he cannot, there is no Katrutvam attached to it. Next slide, please. This is what previous, yeah. So the ultimate reality we have to understand is there's no creation, there's no created. As simply as Osho has put it, the conditional reality is whatever is real today but is not real yesterday and may not be real tomorrow is conditional reality, or mithya, or maya. That means, for example, this pen is here, this pen is not there. That means this pen is mithya. Similarly, I am here today, tomorrow I may not be there, yesterday I was not there. This is mithya. So once we understand this mithya and maya, and we understand there's no birthlessness and there is nityam, then we understand that whatever philosophies, other philosophies other than Advaitam, other than there is only Brahman, all others fall short of explanation and reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran, for trying to give us the Buddhist philosophies. These are very logical schools, and how Gaudapadacharya is able to point out their loopholes and finally prove that nothing really is born. And initially, it was so difficult to understand this. Now it seems to make sense. Dr. Satyanarayana, please. The questions for you is it true that samsara comes to an end when one gets liberation?
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Logic dictates that samsara, if it is beginningless, can never come to an end. Similarly, liberation, if it is to be endless, can never have a beginning. This logical statement requirement implies that there is something erroneous about our very concept of samsara and liberation, which we held earlier, and that is, this error needs to be corrected. This Karika gives us the reason for the statement that Atman is ever pure, ever free, and ever existent. Here is another defect in the argument of those who maintain that Atman is, in reality, subject to both bondage and liberation. Answering the question, next slide. It is usually taught that samsara comes to an end when one gets liberation. That is, the end of samsara is the beginning of liberation. The former has an end when the latter begins. This is what is taught in earlier part of the study. It helps us to go forward in sadhana to strive for liberation. But when one is liberated, he is free from bondage to samsara. Next slide. This means that the beginning of liberation is the end of samsara. By this fact alone, both disqualify to be counted as reality. When liberation is attained, then one sees the whole matter in a totally different light. From the perspective of reality, the whole scenario is different. When the situation is seen from standpoint of reality, the error is corrected. We see that there is neither any bondage to samsara nor liberation from it. Next slide.
Ask question for you. What is real? Samsara or liberation?
Similar discussion has happened before in chapter 2 on illusion as well. A thing that does not exist before its birth and again does not exist when it dies has also got to be seen as non-existent while it is apparently living. It is so called existence is illusionary or unreal. Although we may recognize the truth of this statement in theory, in practice it is very difficult to accept it as being true. We certainly believe that our existence is real, no matter what theoreticians say. Also, we certainly believe that the world exists despite all the theory that contradicts it. And strange as it may seem, we all have a deep-seated desire to be liberated from sorrow once and for all, even though the theory says that there is no such thing as liberation at all. Next verse says that both samsara as well as liberation are useful concepts, but their utility does not entitle them to be considered as real. They lead the beginner in the right direction, but in the end, they are seen for what they really are, just unreal concepts. But that is known only when one realizes the truth and not before. This is a routine restatement of the proposition after it has been proven. Next slide. On occasions like this, we may be inclined to disagree with Sri Gaudapadacharya's theory of non-existence. But we dare not do that because he has lived it himself and free of all sorrows. As seekers of truth, we have to give credit to direct experience of saints and bow down to their wisdom rather than go on believing in the myths created by our own sinister mind. Let us see how they are contradicted in the dream. Next slide. A person in samsara may be living in a life of drudgery and poverty, but he may dream in which he is king, enjoying all the pleasures of life. Also, he may experience object bondage in his awakening state, and yet he may dream that he is liberated from those bondages. The reverse also can happen in both cases. That we see its existence is due to our ignorance. The objects we see are illusions, but they are regarded as if real. The relevance of these verses is that the entire perceived world, that samsara is unreal. Similarly, liberation from an unreal world also is illogical, and hence liberation is also unreal. This means that both of these are really non-existent from perspective of reality. It does not make them useless, it only makes them relatively unreal. Only eternal bliss prevails. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Satyanarayana, for giving us a real clarity on what is this bondage and liberation. Neeta, please.
Thank you. Our pranams to all our gurus and the Guru Parampara. Special thanks to Dr. Hegde, Swami Paramarthamananda ji, Gaudapada Acharya, Adi Shankara. We are in salutations. Grateful to our speakers of the day. They have done so much work to give it to us on a platter. And Vedanta truly appreciates all our listeners who motivate us. This chapter helps us in Mananam in removing doubts, wrong notions, and it also helps us establish self-knowledge. I want to give my takeaway. I've been taking notes while the speakers were speaking. Gaudapada Acharya brilliantly refutes arguments raised by other philosophies, the Sankhya, the Purva Mimamsa, the Buddhist, and he reinforces Ajati Vada. There is no creation, there is no origination of the world. The existence and the experience of the world is just an appearance, it's mithya. Because creation is universally proclaimed, we have been accepting it all along. If the Dvaitins have been saying that there is creation, we must ask them what is the Mula Karanam, what is the cause? Eternal means modification free. Cause means modification. Eternity and cause cannot go together. If Paramatma is the cause, he cannot be eternal. Eternal God was always there, is, and alone will be. It cannot produce the world. We learned in earlier chapters that the world, this body, this mind is just an appearance. There is no samsari, there is no samsara, there is no moksha. These are all conditional realities. They're concepts, it's an illusion. The realists say mind alone is responsible for all the perceptions. Shunyavadins say nothing is there. The Advaitins go further and say there's one Ekasara Nityam Brahma. And Brahman alone enlivens this mind. The mind is an appearance. The Advaita uses Shabda Pramanam. Slowly, step by step, it transcends the cause-effect idea. And the truth is translogical. This was the first session of the 4 sessions presenting Alata Prakaranam. Next week, Friday, we will go on to the second session of the 4 sessions. Do log in. But before that, Param Vedanta brings you a gift session number 53 on Monday, the 18th of November. Let us conclude with a chant. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you.